Good morning from Kilgore, Texas. This is Jill Powers here again, continuing with my series on Candyman, Semiotics, of Forbidden Love. That is the to be or not to be, the semiotics of forbidden love and Candyman. Continuing from last time, I had discussed the Liebestod as the end toward which Helen is moving as she chooses Candyman as her erstwhile lover while on the run from authorities, and everybody is after her because they think that she is a murderer, and in fact she's not. It's all Candyman. But let me go ahead and I'll try to finish up today. If I don't, I'll have a probably a shorter fourth part, but we will go ahead and start reading it. The story of Candyman is operatic in its high tragedy. His story evokes a cathartic reaction from Helen, inspiring both pity and fear to the point that she not only sympathizes with them, she must discover the essence of his secrets. Candyman's story is high tragedy, and as a urban legend takes its strength from its hidden Abelardian saga, the history of Abelard emphasizes the horror of his mutilation as something so personal it is almost unthinkable. Nevertheless, it really happened. Candyman's story could have easily happened given the history of amputations as punishments for African slaves for even relatively minor offenses, especially in the States. For such a one as Candyman, the punishment fit the crime according to the standards of that time. Furthermore, Helen's response is revealed when was revealed when Candyman takes her, when she goes back to Cabrini Green, and she seems to make an effort to reject him, but is obviously not up to that task. When he takes her is definitely sexual and submissive, as revealed when she comes to Candyman's lair. She begins by attempting to kill him by stabbing him with a hook, but when he only pulls the hook from his chest, she relents to a position of obedience. In this scene, when he kisses her, she suddenly pulls back and sees that she is covered with bees in more ways than one. She will not only be without being, she will become, transformed through her sexuality into nothingness, but have more power as a sign when she becomes nothing than she was in life. This drive toward Thanatos is Dionysian rather than Apollonian, since it, quote, is common to associate Dionysus with frenzied, wild activity, perhaps of a definite sexual hue. Tracy Strong notes, who is a noted Nietzschean critic, states is the same kind of doctrine applied by Shakespeare to the character of Hamlet. Quote, both have truly looked once into the nature of things. They have gained knowledge, and it nauseates them to act, for their action could not change anything in the eternal nature of things, end quote. And the Dionysian, quote, appears to be identified not with the chaos, but rather with knowledge of the chaos and of the artifice of human life, where culture has no justification except that created by virtue of its existence, end quote. As Helen seeks more and more knowledge, what she learns is certainly unsettling to her. Her husband's lack of faith to their marriage, and the nihilistic truth behind Candyman as ghost. But she is compelled to take that knowledge and go on to the logical conclusion of it. Her own death is inevitably destined. As Candyman reveals to her, she is a reincarnation of his lost love, so that her eventual annihilation is fated and inescapable anyway. In literary theory, of course, this concept also intercepts with the literary form in John Keats' concept, his conception of negative capability, which reinforces death as sublime rather than terrible in the conceits of the romantic genre. This meta capability of life turning into the dead leaves of signs within the literary work occurs when Candyman offers Helen the immortality of, quote, being without being, end quote, no longer living in an organic sense as a living, breathing human being, but as part of Candyman's urban legend. This blessed condition, as Candyman refers to it, is what Tracy Strong defines as a condition, quote, endemic to the whole of the human condition, end quote, as nihilism, a metaphysical paradox that springs from the rejection of valuation, the will to live, quote, is hatred against the human, even more against the animal, still more against the material, this horror of the senses, of reason itself, the fear of happiness and beauty, this demand to get out of all appearance, change, becoming, death, wish, from demanding will itself. End quote. It is equating death as the gateway to immortality, to a sublime state of being. As for evidence of this thanatos drive, the next semiotic key to Barker's puzzle comes within the graffiti Candyman uses to warn his audience of his presence, his own being. Sweets to the Sweets comes from Shakespeare's Hamlet. In the scene where Gertrude pays her respects by strewing flowers over the dead body of Ophelia, the eternal virgin, who has just committed suicide for the love of her lost Hamlet. Sweets to the sweet, farewell. I hope thou shouldst been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked, sweet maid, and not have strewed thy grave. That is from Hamlet, Act 5, Scene 1, line 243 through 5. Helen is a kind of Ophelia figure, as well as being a Desdemona figure, whose Othello is the death of her. Implied is that this white woman goes willingly in search of Candyman, calling him 5 times so that we see that there is no mistake in her preference of the murderous lover over her insipid, philandering college professor husband, Trevor, who won't even be around when she really needs him during her first arrest for the disappearance of Anne-Marie's baby. And then, later, of course, for the death of Bernadette. The Hamlet connection does not end there, however, for the most terrible ironic pun of all lies in this idea of being without being, through the sublimation of desire, through the writing of blood on the walls. Hamlet's to be or not to be becomes for Helen whether she should choose to live or to choose to be Candyman's victim of his own fate by hook and by bees. Like Hamlet, she is confronted with the most essential of existential questions, whether to choose a life of bland existence or to choose a spectacularly passionate death and immortality by becoming part of Candyman's urban legend. Helen, like Ophelia and Hamlet, commits suicide by pursuing Candyman, thereby choosing her own fate as short-lived lover, as Bernard Rose states, quote, "It's a romance of death like the Tomb of Ligeia." I just love the Tomb of Ligeia story. If you have not read that particular Poe story, you absolutely should. And you should see the Roger Corman production in the American International film of the Tomb of Ligeia with Vincent Price. It's absolutely stunning Technicolor work. Is a romance of death like the Tomb of Ligeia, a 19th century idea of lovers dying together being the ultimate consummation of some kind of sex act. I saw the relationship between Candyman and Helen in those terms, a doomed love affair where death is the ultimate love act. Candyman only goes after people he loves. He's not going after people for the joy of killing. First, you've got to call him. Second, there has to be some kind of connection. His relationship to Helen is very complicated. According to Bernard Rose, according to critic Scaparotti, as Hamlet himself would note, existence is dull by comparison to that undiscovered country of death, where the dream is a sign of an afterlife. Candyman as ghost is a sign of the afterlife. And to take the quote from Shakespeare that comes after the to be or not to be, to die, to sleep no more, and by sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream, aye, there is the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. As Candyman attempts to seduce Helen, he implores her, why do you want to live? If you would learn just a little from me, you would not beg to live. I am rumor. It is a blessed condition, believe me, to be whispered about at street corners, to live in other people's dreams, but not to have to be. And that is quoting from Candyman himself. Okay. Consummation of desire becomes sublimation through the perpetuation of Candyman's legend. The Othello influence on the film appears to be in the characterization of the black hero Candyman and his victim lover Helen as Desdemona, the Thanatos love of Candyman, like Othello's, consumes Helen. The main Shakespearean references continue to be from Hamlet, however, as well as from the Bible. According to Barker, his use of sweets to the sweet was inspired by a biblical quote from Judges 14. Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. Inspired by a grotesque caricature on a British golden syrup bottle where is portrayed bees coming out of a dead body. According to Barker, in Sweets to the Sweet. The idea of meat gone bad is transferred to that of the projects of Cabrini Green, where the same angst drives its inherent horror, both frustration in desires and obscurity, or in the horror in not being, death and obscurity. According to the screenplay, Rose plays up this reference to Judges in the final seduction scene. Candyman is like Dracula, seducing Helen into committing suicide, implying that a kind of vampiric immortality lies in wait for her. As Byronic hero, Candyman's dark sadness is symbolized in his dark skin gone bad meat, food for the gods. As Bernard Rose notes, the Candyman is a romantic character, the dark, handsome lover who demands total surrender. If you love the Candyman, then you'll die. But while all horror films are about sex, I wanted Candyman to get away from the rape fantasies that one associates with slasher movies. Helen deals with her desires when she summons the Candyman. And that is according to Mr. Schweiger. Furthermore, the biblical connection to the bittersweet nature of death and sacrifice for the sake of sex is all too apparent when we recall that the quote concerns Samson's riddle about a lion he slew when he was traveling to find his bride. He eats both lion and honeycomb, demonstrating what Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz referred to as monadology, the oneness of the universe, as well as a symbolic connection to sexuality itself. This riddle connects with Candyman's riddle Sweets to the Sweet and the idea behind the hook and the mutilated boy. The hook urban legend first tells Helen about Candyman's legend, where Candyman breaks in and kills a babysitter and the child for which she is caring. Ironically, Helen is the one who is hooked by the story into investigating the Candyman legend to begin with, after she talks to a cleaning lady who lives on Chicago's South Side and swears that Candyman lives in Cabrini Green. And by the way, I actually had a student in one of my Gothic literature and film classes who was from the South Side of Chicago. He swore up and down that Candyman was real. Absolutely, I know. Life imitating fiction, isn't that funny? Okay. The Hook urban legend first tells Helen about Candyman's legend. He breaks in, kills the babysitter. Okay. In the film, it's just another murder committed by Candyman, not tied to the romantic ideal that Candyman kills only those he loves. But he does kill those who are faithful to him. And that is the babysitter who called him actually wanted that. Okay, so it's just another murder that you think it's just another murder. Nevertheless, the moral of these urban legends is that premarital sex is punishable by death because they are forbidden. The original title of Barker's short story. The original title of Barker's short story. The Hook brings in the romantic angle of the forbidden love. Mutilated Boy, on the other hand, brings in the forbidden element of homosexual liaisons resulting in death, certainly possible considering Barker's own homosexuality and his frequent penchant for writing slasher tales, hence slash homosexual sex stories. Jan Harold Brunwald, noted folklore and urban legends author, confirms that the Mutilated Boy is a popular restroom legend that was used as an example of rampant deviant homosexual behavior. The sexual deviancy motif, the socioeconomic motif, and the racism motif are all emphasized in the boy murders in the short story and film. And Rose and Barker not so subtly imply that any act of sexual penetration, if done out of the context of permissible circumstances, is punishable by death, madness, or dismemberment, or all three, as in the case of Candyman. The child Anthony in the film, Carrie in the short story, like the child Candyman in his lost love, is the child of single mother Anne Marie, whose punishment in the short story is that she must sacrifice the child to Candyman's hook, and in the film only gets him back through Helen's sacrifice. She has to literally sacrifice herself. Helen sacrifices herself for this child because, as the graffiti murals in Candyman's lair reveal, she is a reincarnation of Candyman's lost love. It was her turn to sacrifice herself for him, going into the bonfire. But in the end, while she is burned, she is able to save the child, literally. Helen becomes a sign for ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and the child becomes a sign for the triumph of life after death, of hope for the future. She annihilates herself in hope of saving the future. The film's emphasis on Candyman's use of the child has as its core an age-old legend. The final irony of these legends is that they continue to circulate so well through anecdotal oral tradition. In my fantastic literature and film class, as I said, that student swore up and down that Candyman was real. This is meta-semiotic, okay, is where life is imitating art, ironically enough. So, the cycle of urban legend continues to evolve as the 21st century has introduced the play of Candyman in the Blair Witch Project. The global circulation of such narratives indicates no slowing in their exponential potential for simultaneous oral and literary production. All right, well, we managed to finish this one up, and I will continue with some of my analyses that I have written. Once again, I will provide a link to my LinkedIn page where you can read any of these. Um, what should I do next? Harry Potter? Sideways? CSI? Bioshock? Done all those. Yes, yes. I have a number of works that I can cover. Anyway, so that's it for today, and I will be seeing you. Bye.